You're listening to the best of American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
News of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue, flying high on the
Welcome to American Heartland. In just a few days, there will be another individual who will join the GOP field in the fight to win the nomination of the Republican Party. That man is also the man that if you've been listening to the show very carefully, you know that I like the most. And I want to say that in all of the, if we have to look at all the candidates who have announced their candidacy so far, and all those who folks are guessing will announce in the future, if you put them all together and weigh all the pros and all the cons, for me, there is one person who wins that battle. And so today, a very important moment on American Heartland, I'm going to announce the person who I think would be the best leader of the Republican Party for 2016. Roll the drums, Brittany. And the man that Dr. Grace thinks should be the Republican nominee is Governor Mike Huckabee. Yes, folks, I'm with the governor. He has indicated in numerous interviews across the country that there's a big announcement coming May 5 in Hope, Arkansas. And all of the pundits are saying that obviously he's going to announce that he is throwing his hat in the ring. And I got to tell you, Mike Huckabee has won me over. And I want to start by saying, if you look at all the candidates out there, there isn't a single candidate in the GOP field that has it all, that has the whole package. Every single candidate has pros and has cons. Every single one of them. And that's why when we look at Governor Mike Huckabee, some folks are going to say, but wait a minute, Dr. Grace. Don't you know that his record has this and his record has that? And it's look, there's not a perfect candidate. We're not going to find one. But I believe that Governor Mike Huckabee is the best that we have right now. And I'll take all his flaws and match that up with anybody else's record. And I believe that he comes out on top. Now, I'm saying this as a voter. I'm not saying I think he's going to win. I'm not saying that. I'm saying he's the man that I want to win. I want him to win the Republican nomination. And I'll tell you why. First and foremost, this is a man who has executive experience in politics. And let's not understate how important that is. He was a governor 2 times. He has a huge record that we can look at. You know, it's like walking down the aisle with somebody that you already know. And you know what? If you dated somebody a long time before you walk down the aisle, you know that person's flaws. And you've also ascertained that on the whole, this is a good match. And that's the same when you look at somebody that has a governing record, for me, if you don't have a governing record, you don't even make the first cut. I don't want to look at you. So I disagree with the enthusiasm. I've said on this show, I don't care about Ted Cruz. I don't care about Rand Paul. I don't care about Marco Rubio. I don't think they make the first basic cut. Give me a strong record, a governor's record. So if we take away all those candidates who don't have governing experience or who don't have extensive experience, I don't like these junior senators, these young men running way before they should. You take it away and you're left with a battle amongst the governors. So compare Mike Huckabee as a governor and everything he stands for and everything he's done with any other governor, whether it's John Kasich of Ohio, whether it's Jeb Bush of Florida, Scott Walker of Wisconsin, and I say Mike Huckabee is the best that we've got. First and foremost, and this is what I look at as a voter, it's very important to me, and I know there's a lot of Christians out there that are going to say, amen, Dr. Grace. This man is a sincere, practicing, and devoted Christian. Not some of the time, all of the time. He was, in fact, a Southern Baptist minister. And you know what really impresses me about Mike Huckabee? He had a show on Fox News. And I'm saying this as a Christian woman who worked in the national media. And I know how hard it is to maintain your Christian principles in the national media, even the conservative media. And I can tell you this about Mike Huckabee, because I'm one of those people who used to watch his show. He was proud to be a Christian. He didn't flinch on his Christian convictions. This is a man who stands for life. And you know what? For somebody like me who is staunchly pro-life, don't even come close to me as a nominee if you don't stand for life. And if you don't stand boldly for life. And this man is pro-life. Also, he is against same-sex marriage, another cardinal principle of Dr. Grace. I don't want this nation going down this dark path that we are on. And Mike Huckabee has taken a stance for this. In addition, how many people have spoken out for the plight of Christians in this country, the repeated persecution that Christians are enduring for their beliefs? Mike Huckabee has. How many folks have spoken out to defend and protect and fight for those Christians around the world who are victims now of President Barack Obama's pathetic, tragic, and catastrophic foreign policy? Mike Huckabee has. So, as a devout Christian, I've got to choose another devout Christian as a nominee. And not just a devout Christian who hides his Christianity or talks about it once in a while. I want a forceful Christian. And this man has stood for his Christian convictions on a national show on Fox News where you can bet your bottom dollar there is always pressure in the national media to hide your Christianity. So he has executive experience. He's a forceful Christian. He is against this insane, lawless country that we have now created with the Obama presidency. He believes in the Constitution. He despises President Obama's executive overreach. And he wants to secure our border. These things are very important, and I believe that he is sincere in that. Now, some people will say, but wait a minute, look at his record. He's, a bit of a tax and spender there. He's not perhaps the strongest fiscal conservative out there. Grant that. But the situation has changed in this country. We have a national debt that poses a threat to everything. It poses a threat to our economy. It poses a threat to our foreign affairs. He understands that. And because he's a deep patriot, I believe that he will get our fiscal house in order. And there's a lot more that I like about him. He's a master communicator, folks. Look, the hardest thing in the world to do, one of the hardest things is to master policy and then be able to turn around and talk to the common guy in an authentic, clear, and concise manner. And Mike Huckabee has that skill. Now, some folks are saying, you know what, Dr. Grace? He's probably going to get the evangelical vote. And I admit the evangelical vote is a really important part of the Republican Party. But what's he going to get beyond that? You know what he's going to get beyond that? He has the popular touch. He's a populist. And he's going to appeal to the white working class who has conservative values and is largely ignored in this country. I want you to hear a couple of clips, and you'll see what I mean about a man whose candidacy is likely to soar the moment after he announces. Listen to Mike Huckabee in the next 2 clips. Roll it, Brittany.
Small town like so many Americans have grown up in that really shaped my life, my values, my perspective. And it's also that place where I grew up never thinking that I would see a president in person. Never thought I'd meet a governor. When I was 8 years old, my dad took me down to hear the governor of Arkansas make a speech dedicating a lake, and he said, now, son, I'm going to take you down to hear the governor make a talk because, son, you may live your whole life and you may never get to meet a governor in person. But it's kind of symbolic to me of what America is about, this great country where a kid growing up in a little rent house could have big dreams and could live those dreams. And there are a lot of Americans who are about to give up on those dreams because it's...
Well, you see, this is the language of meritocracy. And this is the language that people can relate to. So even though he's had all of this success, all of this power, all of this fame, all of this wealth, he can still communicate in such simple, direct terms that is also very moving. He's very evocative. I saw him speak in Washington, D.C., and I was literally blown away. This was at least 6 or 7 years ago. And I thought, this is a man that is really going places. You know, last week I interviewed Bill Cooksey, and he had a chance to meet so many of the Republican candidates up front, close and personal. And he had an impression when he met them close and personal. And one of his favorites is Ted Cruz. And he said when he heard Ted Cruz, he felt that it was magical for him. You know, when I first heard Mike Huckabee, to me, it's a little bit like the room lit up. It was a magical moment. He's a captivating speaker. And he knows also not only how to woo a crowd, but he knows that retail politics, how to mix and mingle and get to know the common folk around him and make them feel like every single one of them is important. So he's a master communicator. And he has a message right now that really touches people's heartstrings. Roll it, Brittany.
Sense that I don't believe that the whole country ought to just follow allegiance to corporations. Now, let me be very clear. I'm not against corporations. I'm a big business, small business, all business kind of guy. But business ought to all play by the same rules. And one of the things that I do fear is that we get to the place where sometimes the Republican Party almost just surrenders to whatever the corporate interests are. I don't think that's smart. For example, if we let corporations engage with multinational trade agreements in which the other countries are cheating, but the U.S. company doesn't mind because it's profitable doing it, the government needs to step in and say, wait a minute, Americans are losing jobs.
Yes.
Americans are losing the ability to make products. And you don't surrender to the Chinese or to the South Koreans or the Japanese just because somebody is making bucks. If you're doing that over the backs of Americans, there's something wrong with that.
Well, look, that's a really powerful message. Sarah Palin, has gotten a lot of capital, to use an intended pun, from this message about crony capitalism, which is destroying our country and which is allowing, or it's provoking so many people to lose faith in the way our republic works. So Huckabee has a strong message that appeals to the common folks about, look, he's not anti-business like these socialist Democrats that are in power. But at the same time, he knows that crony capitalism is destructive. That's a message that the established candidates like Jeb Bush, they're tone deaf to that. But that's a message that's going to resonate out there. And there's more. Roll it, Brittany.
On me in 2008 was not exactly accurate, where people thought that the only support I had was evangelical vote. Frankly, the fact is, if all of the evangelicals had really coalesced around me, I would have probably maybe been the nominee, but I certainly would have won more states, even than the 8 or 9 states that I won, coming in second to McCain. So the fact is, a lot of my support came from blue-collar, working-class people who felt this government had been completely dismissive and even unaware of their existence, much less the struggles they were having. Because here's the problem. We've had wage stagnation in America for the past 40 years. The bottom 90% of the American workforce has not really had a wage increase in 40 years. It's been stagnant. That's got to change.
So this is a man that can talk about the struggles of the working class and roll that into an anti-big government message. That is one powerful candidate. And to those who are saying he's just going to appeal to the evangelicals, you're wrong. As you've seen in this monologue, he's got a populist touch and a populist message that is going to go a long, long way. You heard it here on American Heartland with Dr. Grace. Watch out for Governor Mike Huckabee. When he announces this week, he is going to end up being one formidable opponent. Go, Mike, go!
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome back. Whose life is it? There is a national controversy that has erupted regarding Modern Family's Emmy-nominated actress Sofia Vergara. I'm sure you know who she is. She's a funny lady. She is all over the news lately because while she was engaged to Nick Loeb, her now former fiancé, they decided that they wanted to have children together. And they have they have basically an embryo that is frozen. It is an embryo of twins. And they signed papers that at the appropriate time, they were going to allow these girls, these 2 twin girls, to emerge into life, to be given life. Well, after they broke up, Sofia decided that she wants to just leave those embryos frozen indefinitely. Frozen indefinitely. And her fiancé has said, no, I want to be a father to those twin girls. I want to bring those girls to life. And so now he and she are engaged in a legal battle. Now, Sofia has said in her defense, listen, when we signed papers together, we were going to do this. Our agreement was that we both had to consent. And unless we both consented, then the embryos were never going to be brought to life. So she believes she has a very strong legal case. Nick Loeb, on the other hand, insists that he wants to parent these girls. And I don't know on what legal grounds he will argue because his lawyer hasn't exactly specified. And I don't know how the courts are going to determine this, how they're going to untangle this. Why? Because we're in a whole new area. This is a whole new frontier. This is the new frontier of a phenomenon that I despise to my very core. It is artificial reproduction. And you know what that is? That is people playing God in areas that they have no business being involved in. Nobody, in my view, has the right to artificially create life. I've been opposed to this from the start, and I've been opposed to this even when it was in my own self-interest to perhaps support it. In my early 30s, it became apparent to me that perhaps the chances of my conceiving naturally, having children naturally, was going to be very, very slim, if not impossible. And many friends said to me, you know what? Why don't you, artificial insemination? There's a lot of things you can do nowadays. And I never even hesitated. Absolutely not. That is deplorable and despicable. Because that is human beings playing God. And when I was tested whether or not I would uphold this basic cardinal belief of mine, which in my Catholic heritage, artificial reproduction of any kind is prohibited, I stayed true to that test. I believed profoundly that if there was this desire in me to be a mother, somehow, some way, the Lord would find a path to bring me to my children. I never, ever hesitated, never wavered in that faith. And indeed, there were 2 children that needed me to be their mom. We found our way to one another. And my faith led me to my family. You have a situation here where people believe that they are their own makers, that they can do whatever they want with their bodies, with their lives. Here you have these wealthy individuals who create life here, and then, we created it, but now, you know what? It's not convenient. We broke up. I don't want to give them life. Just forget about it. Just leave them frozen. Just leave those twins frozen. That is grotesque. I don't care what the legalese are on this. Oh, they both signed. They both consented legally. Morally and ethically, bring those girls to life. And shame on you for considering any other option. Now it's too late. Even though I'm opposed to artificial reproduction, they did it. Now that is a life. And those lives, that is 2 lives, in fact, they have to be preserved. Bring those twins to life. So Sofia Vergara is all over the news. She gave recently an interview to Howard Stern, and listen to her pathetic argument in defense of herself.
You guys break up, and you say, look, I don't want to have a baby with you. I'm not involved with you anymore.
Can you blame me?
I can't blame you. By the way, a child needs a mother.
A mother and a loving, more than a mother, needs a loving relationship of parents, that get along, that don't hate each other. You
hate each other now?
Well, I don't hate him, but obviously he has a problem with me.
Yes. Well, when you break up with a guy, there's a problem.
Yeah. If it was so serious for him, this issue, then you should have taken it more serious at the time, like I did. The thing is this, that fortunately and unfortunately, there is law. You sign papers, legal papers. A kid needs a parents to bring to the world, kids that are already set up everything wrong for them.
Right,
it would be so selfish.
It would be so selfish, she is arguing, for her to actually allow these twins to emerge. It is the opposite. It is everything she's done is the height of selfishness. When it was convenient for her, she allowed the embryos to be formed. When it became inconvenient, she has decided to leave those embryos frozen in perpetuity. If that's not selfish, I don't know what is. And her arguments don't make any sense. She says to Howard Stern, can you blame me? Can you blame me? Of course we can blame you. Those babies are already there. Life begins at conception. Hence, those babies already exist. And so, of course, we can blame you. She makes this argument, they need a loving relationship. Look, there are, if the specific relationship that you're in isn't good for those kids, don't worry. There are plenty of opportunities that will come the way of those kids. If you don't want those kids, we at least know that the father wants them. And according to liberal America, a single parent can parent well. A single parent who remarries can do it. There are so many different kinds of families, aren't there, nowadays? In fact, you are in a store. You're in a show called Modern Family. So many different kinds of modern families. Where's your imagination, Sophia? You know what children need before they need a loving relationship? They need the love of a mother's heart. That's what they need first and foremost. It's monstrous. It's monstrous to me that she would just think of leaving those girls there frozen in perpetuity like that. And then she says, well, you know, we did sign legal papers. Well, he changed his mind. How many people change their minds over something that huge? How many married couples say, I really don't want another baby. Suddenly there's another baby that emerges. And, oh my, we're going to welcome this other baby. In fact, one of my very dear friends who has 2 beautiful girls, she said, I'm all done. Before you know it, next time I see her, I'm pregnant. You're what? Shock. And recently we got together as I held her beautiful little boy, Richard, in my arms. So, that is the way of the world. So now, Nick Loeb wants to be a father. And she's trying to put out this idea that he's really got some kind of an agenda. Some kind of an agenda that's about her somehow. Well, you know what this is really all about? It's about those 2 twin girls. And the real question is this: who determines who lives and who dies? The problem with Sofia Vergara is she is so proud. She's so full of hubris. She's so full of herself. She considers herself the determinant of life or not life. And you know, she wants to leave these, frozen in perpetuity. Who knows? Maybe if the current relationship that she's in goes bust, maybe she'll change her mind. That's how whimsical. If that's not selfish, I don't know what is. And you know what she's shown by all this? She doesn't have a mother's heart. You talk to any mother out there, and they're always saying this: my children come first. I go shopping, and before I buy something for me, I buy something for them. I establish the family budget. Before I think about something for me, I think about something for them. I wake up in the morning. Before I feed myself, I feed them. That's a mother's heart. That's a mother's love. She is cold, hard, and selfish. And as a society, this is the dreadful road that we are going down. We think we can do whatever we want, and now we are going to be having a conversation and obviously a whole set of laws. This is a brave new world. Lots of court battles over what happens to embryos that were artificially created in the first place. And the solution is really, really simple. We should have the good sense in this society, the good sense to leave reproduction as it is. If you happen to conceive naturally, congratulations. And if you don't, take it from me. The Lord has a special plan for you. Don't play God. I conclude this segment with this beautiful song that was written by a woman that celebrates her disabled child. And I want you to listen to it and think, if we start playing God like this about when it's convenient and not convenient to fulfill the trajectory of life, where will it end? Will we begin to not give life to the disabled, to the weak, to the imperfect? That is the selfish road we're on and the slippery slope that we're on. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that won't die.
In that moment disappears, and you realize that it's all worthwhile when it's your child.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
You're listening to the best of American Heartland with Dr. Grace. You're listening to the best of American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dear future husband, here's a few things you need to know if you want to be my one and only all my life.
Welcome back. Is it a husband? Is it a wife? We don't know. I've been meaning to get this story for a while. I'm obviously referring to Bruce Jenner. He delivered an interview on 2020 that received a lot of attention. And he declared at last, guess what? What we already know, he is transitioning into a woman. So the former Olympian has now come out. He wants to be a woman. He told his story. And there is a perception, a mantra in the media that, we really should support him. We have to embrace him. What he did was so brave. In other words, they're trying to tell us Bruce Jenner is a hero. I'm not convinced that that's accurate at all. Nor is my guest, who has a piece in worldtribune.com. It is Loredana Vuoro. She is the senior news writer and editor at Alliance Defending Freedom. She's here at a segment we're going to do together quite often called Exposing Follywood, which is to talk about all the folly in Hollywood. Lori, welcome to the show. Hello, Lori. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Welcome to the show. It's great to have you. And for audience members who don't already know, Loredana Vuoro is also my brilliant younger sister. Well, you wrote a fabulous piece, which is in World Tribune, and you call Bruce Jenner, in fact, the anti-hero of our time. How dare you say that?
I know it's shocking given all the accolades he's received for coming out as a hero, but unfortunately, my heart goes out to him and people like him who are suffering from gender dysphoria and gender identity crisis. But heroes really set an example of virtue and strength of character for all to emulate. And they take the hand that life has dealt with them and they deal with it head on, and they struggle to overcome whatever difficulties they may have. They don't reject the very essence of their being and try to find a quick fix solution for obviously something that is a very deep and underlying issue, a deep problem that needs to be addressed.
Right, and you're suggesting that you're not minimizing what he's experienced. He feels this overwhelming sense that he is a woman, and I want the audience to hear a small snippet in his own words. Roll it.
God's looking down, making little Bruce. Okay? He's looking down and he says, okay, what are we going to do with this one? Make him a smart kid, very determined. And he gave me all these wonderful qualities. And then at the end, when he's just finishing, he goes, wait a second. We got to give him something. Everybody has stuff in their life that they have to deal with. What are we going to give him? And God looks down and chuckles a little bit and goes, hey, let's give him the soul of a female. And let's see how he deals with that.
Lori, one of the things that struck me is suddenly liberals are talking about souls. They reject that very concept generally. Now, yes. Bruce Jenner has the soul of a female because he wants to change his body.
And I found that clip very, very sad because here he is. He has half the equation right. He is acknowledging God and that God created him, but he created him in his image and likeness. And yes, we all have our cross to bear, but the solution is not to reject that gift that he gave us. And even our crosses can be a gift where we can learn and grow and overcome our difficulties. So I thought it was very sad to see that.
I think really sad and also pretty pathetic because, look, in our day and age, you can be as feminine a male as you want to be. You know, we have such a wide variety, such a latitude that we give people in how they want to dress, how they want to express themselves. You can be as feminine as a male as you want to. You can be as masculine a male as you want to be. You can be as feminine a woman as you want to be. You can be as masculine a woman. The latitude is so great. And it surprises me that, you know, it's not enough for him. Now, he even wants to tamper with his very own body parts. And that's where I draw the line. I really believe that that is a form of bodily mutilation. And I think that practice should be banned.
Yes, and that's what I found very disturbing, is that instead of setting an example to so many who are struggling with this issue, he basically, by doing this interview and talking about this transition to become a woman, he is basically giving legitimacy and respectability to a very serious physical and psychological disorder. And he's basically telling them, yes, it's okay, follow my example, mutilate your body parts, and just create your own body and become your own God, and just, you know, whatever you feel like goes.
Yeah, and that
is very wrong.
What I found really interesting about your piece, Laurie, is that you actually chronicle instances, and even you back it up with statistics, of people who have undergone these sex change operations. And they say that it doesn't solve the problems for them, that they still feel suicidal, that they still feel depressed, that some of them deeply regret it. Tell us about all that.
Yes. Well, actually, a 2004 University of Birmingham research study reviewed 100 international post-operative transsexuals, that is, people that actually underwent gender reassignment surgery. And the study concluded that the treatment, undergoing the surgery, is actually clinically ineffective for treating their depression and their symptoms. And that many of them who actually undergo the surgery then become unprepared to live this new life in this new gender, and they suffer higher rates of depression, very high rates of, many end up committing suicide, and many need psychiatric care and commit criminal behavior. They have a higher incidence of that, and many actually end up regretting doing the surgery. And in fact, Renee Richards, a tennis champion, he was one of the first to have the gender reassignment surgery. He gave a very poignant interview with Tennis Magazine in 1999, where he said that he wishes there was a drug or medication that would have helped him at the time to cope with his compulsion to cross-dress and to want to change gender, and that at least then he was a totally intact person. But now, as a woman, he does not feel like an intact person, and that he has extreme depression, and he wishes that all those people that write to him about doing a sex change, he wants to discourage them all and tell them not to do it because he is not fulfilled as a woman. And this is not the answer.
I found that so compelling. This is the quote by Renee Richards. If there was a drug that I could have taken that would have reduced the pressure, I would have been better off staying the way I was, a totally intact person. Wow, that's a very powerful phrase, a totally intact person, meaning that he feels undone, basically. And then he says this, too, quote, I get a lot of letters from people who are considering having this operation, and I discourage them all. He says that he's really not fulfilled and deeply regrets what he did. That's very powerful, and we're not hearing any of that in the media. We're not hearing that, you know what, maybe this problem, it's not going to be resolved by mutilating your body. Maybe, guess what? The cure is worse than the disease.
Absolutely, and the media is completely hushing this harsh reality, this very stark reality. Instead, there has been a great outcry for a ban on conversion therapy treatment. And actually, President Barack Obama came out in April banning conversion therapy treatments.
Now, for the audience, explain what that is. Yeah, what is a conversion therapy?
For those who are struggling with sexual orientation and gender identity, they go to seek help so that they can convert back to, well, understand, have a better understanding, and accept their natural gender and their identity. So it's considered reparative therapy, and it's most oftenly referred to as conversion therapy.
Basically, let me summarize it. Those are your genitals, and they're here to stay. Accept them, love them. That's conversion therapy in a nutshell, right, Lori?
And just treat the underlying psychological issues at hand.
As to why are you taking out whatever you're taking out on your poor genitals? You know, that's how I have to summarize it. Whatever you're struggling with there, Bruce, why are you taking it out on your body parts? That's my question.
Yes, it's very sad. And actually, if you watch the interview, there's even a very, very sad moment where Khloe Kardashian, there's a clip of her telling him on Keeping Up with the Kardashians, saying how much he's been a great male role model to her. She had her father died when she was quite young, and he became her stepfather, and she had a very public, nasty divorce with her husband. And so she was actually giving him praise for being a really great male role model. And he was then saying in the interview with Diane Sawyer that she was taking this a bit hard. But it is so sad because what Khloe Kardashian said is very true. We do not give enough credit to the male role models out there. And now instead of him living up to this role model, and he's such a role model, having won the gold medal in the decathlon for the 1976 Summer Olympics for USA, he should be living up to that mantle of being this hero. Instead, he's rejecting his gender, he's rejecting the gift of life God gave him, and he's transforming himself into something that goes against the natural order.
It does, and I had a discussion with this about my husband, and one of the things he said is, well, just to play devil's advocate, who's he hurting? And I said, well, think about his children. Think about his stepchildren. He's obviously hurting them, and I think we can't even begin to imagine now the full consequences of the impact on children of people who behave this way and do that to their bodies. I mean, I think we're just at the cusp.
Linda Thompson, Bruce's second ex-wife, she actually wrote a very compelling piece in the Huffington Post. And although she praises him for coming out and she supports him to be, quote-unquote, to be authentically who he was born to be, she does reveal how difficult it was for her to accept it when they were married, and how it caused the breakdown of their marriage, and also how her two sons once caught Bruce Jenner coming out of the shower, and he had breasts, and they were extremely traumatized by that. And he had, at the time, was taking female hormones. So she had to explain to them. She didn't tell them the truth. She simply lied to her own boys and said, oh, well, it's because he was an athlete for so many years and his muscles just grew and now they're maybe a little flabby.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty quick. That was a good comeback. Yeah.
Yes, I would agree.
That's pretty good. But you know what? That is. It has a huge impact. And I thought there he was, Bruce Jenner, this pitiful creature at the interview. It's all about him. It's all about him. It's all about me, myself, and I, and how I feel. And there's very little regard for the others around him. And that's very typical of this kind of mindset that we're in, about trying to find some kind of fulfillment. But when the focus is on me, you'll never find it, no matter what you're talking about. Fulfillment doesn't come in the me. It never has, it never will. Well, Lori, I want to ask you one last question. You did bring up the Kardashians.
Yes,
and
I
got to ask you.
Name.
Yeah, I got to ask you about the side controversy about Kris Jenner. She is the last of his ex-wives, so that's ex-wife number 3, and she was
Correct.
One of the wives that did not come out and tweet her support right away. She came under heavy fire for that, and later on she did, support him, etc. But you have an insight into that. She's kind of lying to us about what she knew, right?
Well, I strongly suspect, even though I don't have any proof about that. I mean, if the ex-wife, if Bruce's second ex-wife knew about this, and actually his first ex-wife also knew about his fetish to want to dress as a woman, and that he was contemplating this for years, it's highly unlikely that Kris Jenner was oblivious to all this, and especially that if he was taking female hormones, and apparently he's resumed taking them for the past year and a half.
Yeah, she would have noticed those female. Yeah, she would have noticed those female body parts.
She would have noticed those changes. And also she was kind of caught in a lie as well. Initially, when the interview aired and there was no comment from her, Perez Hilton, the entertainment blogger, tweeted at her saying, well, what about you? And she tweeted back saying, well, nobody ever commented. Nobody ever contacted me for comments. But that's not true. She then later issued a statement that she was contacted about fact-checking the actual interview, but since she hadn't seen it, she couldn't comment. Not that she was not commenting on what he said.
Exactly.
And she then sent another tweet later after that saying that she was honored to be Bruce Jenner's wife for 25 years and the father of her children, and now she's proud to call him her hero.
Well,
so I think there's a lot of hypocrisy there going on, and a lot of smoke and mirrors, and
lies, outright lies. She knew about it. How could she not see those body parts that the 8-year-old son saw years ago? She's a liar. The Kardashians are at it again. Thank you so much, Loredana Vuoro. She's the senior news writer and editor, and check out her piece at World Tribune. Thank you for being with us.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
You're listening to the best of American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Shut up, just shut up, shut up, 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 just shut up, shut up, shut up, just shut up, shut up.
Welcome back. It's that time again. I'm sure you enjoyed not hearing his voice all of this broadcast, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to impose it upon all of you. The one who really deserves to be told to just shut up this week is none other than President Barack Obama, trying to convince us all that it is better to keep our children in the public school system, even if we can afford putting them into the private school system. Brace yourself and listen to this.
Part of what's happened is that, and this is where Arthur and I would probably have some disagreements, we don't dispute that the free market is the greatest producer of wealth in history. It has lifted billions of people out of poverty. We believe in property rights, rule of law, so forth. But there has always been trends in the market in which concentrations of wealth can lead to some being left behind. And what's happened in our economy is that those who are doing better and better, more skilled, more educated, luckier, having greater advantages, are withdrawing from sort of the commons. Kids start going to private schools. Kids start working out at private clubs instead of the public parks. An anti-government ideology then disinvests from those common goods and those things that draw us together. And that, in part, contributes to the fact that there's less opportunity for our kids, all of our kids. Now, that's not inevitable.
So that's him. Although he went to private schools and his children are in private schools, he's trying to tell us, you know what? Do your best and let's try to save the public school system. You know why an anti-government ideology is emerging amongst parents who have to make these difficult decisions? It's because the government fails when it intervenes in matters that it has no business interfering in. I had to make the very difficult, painful decision to pay a lot of money now to send my boy to school so that he can get a Christian education rather than have his brain marinated in liberalism from kindergarten on up. I didn't want to do that. And it is because of so much government interference in the curriculum that I fear that his brain is going to be poisoned beyond repair, that I now, against my will almost, am forced to pay the extra money to put my child into a public school. So he got only the first part of that right. The free market works, and anti-government ideology grows and grows and grows when government intervention keeps failing and failing and failing. And Obama, don't be such a hypocrite. At least have the good sense to acknowledge what you did for your girls. Putting them in private school is what so many other parents conclude is the right thing for their children. So don't stand there on your high horse and talk about disinvesting from the commons that now is going to impoverish everybody when your girls are riding high. You know what? Just shut up. All right. Speaking of time of our lives, we've got other candidates that recently have entered the Republican fold. There's Carly Fiorina. There's Ben Carson. And I know Ben Carson excites many people out there. He's a brilliant neurosurgeon, very accomplished. So he was interviewed on Fox News on Sunday. And there I was rooting for him. But you know what? So many of his answers just fell flat. And I tell you this from the perspective of someone who wants him to do well, and from the perspective of someone who knows Washington, D.C. And when I say I know Washington, D.C., I know the media class in Washington, D.C. too, the right wing and the left wing. And I'm telling you that if Ben Carson doesn't pick up his game, he's going to be eaten alive. He was asked whether or not he has enough experience to be in the race, and he gave a weak answer. He said that he has experience leading teams as a neurosurgeon. He led a nonprofit organization very successfully. That's not good enough. The answer was specifically, do you have the political experience? I don't think he nailed that answer. He was then asked a foreign policy question, and it was about Russia. And again, his answer was a little bit over the top, saying, he was willing and ready to use military force. And then he kind of backpedaled on that. And here he is with another answer to what is a pretty interesting idea, but he didn't have the knowledge to carry it through all the way. Listen to him interacting with Chris Wallace on the issue of his tax plan.
One of the pillars of your economic program is a flat tax. How would that work?
Well, I like the idea of a proportional tax. That way you pay according to your ability. And I got that idea, quite frankly, from the Bible, tithing. You make $10 billion a year, you pay $1 billion. You make $10 a year, you pay $1 billion. You get the same rights. That's pretty darn fair if you ask me. Now, some people say it's not fair because, the poor people can't afford to pay that dollar. That's very condescending. I grew up very poor. I've experienced every economic level. And I can tell you that poor people have pride too. And they don't want to be just taken care of. And also, if everybody is paying, it makes it very difficult for these politicians to come along and raise taxes. It's easy to raise it on 1% or 2% or 5%. It's very difficult to raise it on 100%.
Well, okay, so far so good, right? Interesting argument, interesting idea. He's articulating it well, the language of fairness. But watch out, here come the mutants.
But, Doctor, here is the problem with a flat tax in the real world. According to the Tax Policy Center, to raise the same amount of revenue we do now, the tax rate would have to be in the low to mid 20% range.
Wrong.
Low and middle income families would get a big tax hike, while wealthy families would actually get a big tax cut.
That's actually not, I don't agree with that assessment. Let me put it that way. Because I've been in contact with many economists, and in fact, if you eliminate the loopholes and the deductions, then you're really talking about a rate somewhere between 10 and 15%.
I got to tell you, the outside experts we talk to say you're talking in the 20s.
Let's have a battle of the experts.
Well, we'll have a battle of the I mean, that's right.
Battle of the experts? No, wrong. You see, when the mutants debate you, they come up with their graphs. You know, Chris Wallace, immediately the graph went up. Your tax plan, this, and this will happen to the lower class and the middle class and the working class. And then your answer is, let's have a battle of the experts. He went on to say, you know, it's complex and it would require an overhaul of the whole tax code. But you know what, Ben Carson, with all due respect, at this point, you've lost the audience. They don't want their tax rates to go up. And you know what? They don't want to hear a battle of the experts. You, as a politician, are the one who is supposed to break down the expert analysis in simple and compelling language that convinces all of us, hey, that's the way to go. So, strike 1 on experience, didn't handle it good enough. Strike 2, over the top on his foreign policy responses. And strike 3 on the tax plan. As I said before, I'm talking from the perspective of somebody who would like to see him do well, because I think his participation is good and he's got a lot to contribute. But you have to understand something, Ben Carson. You're going up against not just one mutant like Chris Wallace, but hundreds of them. And unless you pick up your game, they're going to eat you alive. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that won't die.
Here's what I tell everyone. I was born by God's dear grace.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.